The council chambers stretched out like a cathedral built for giants. Ambassador Daniel Brooks walked through the entrance and felt the weight of 1,000 eyes watching him. Some of those eyes were not even on faces that looked human. Some species had eyes on stalks. Others had clusters of sensing organs that Daniel could only guess served the same purpose. He kept his expression calm and his steps steady. Behind him, his small team of advisors matched his pace. They had practiced this walk a dozen times on the shuttle ride over. First impressions mattered, even when you were representing the species to reach the stars. The Galactic Council had existed for over 10,000 years. Humanity had known about it for exactly 6 months. In galactic terms, humans were infants. In practical terms, that meant Earth was given probationary observer status and very little respect. Daniel had spent those 6 months learning to accept the condescending attitudes and dismissive gestures. It was part of the job. Earth needed allies, needed trade agreements, needed access to technologies that would take centuries to develop on their own. So Daniel smiled through the insults and nodded through the lectures about how young species needed to learn patience. But today felt different. The summons had arrived without warning. An emergency session, the message said, attendance mandatory, no explanation given. Daniel took his seat in the section reserved for probationary members. It was off to the side, away from the main floor where full council members sat in a wide circle. The architecture itself was a statement about hierarchy and power. Captain Lisa Martinez stood behind Daniel's chair. As commander of the Endeavor, the escort ship that had brought them here, she was technically just transportation. But Daniel valued her presence. Lisa had a gift for reading situations, and her hand never strayed far from the sidearm she wore despite council regulations prohibiting weapons in the chambers. The lights dimmed. A holographic display materialized in the center of the circular chamber, and the council speaker glided forward. Was a serpentine creature, 3 meters long with scales that shimmered between blue and green. His species held one of the permanent seats on the council. They were old, powerful, and made sure everyone knew it. "This session is called to order," announced. His voice came through translation devices embedded in every seat, rendering his hissing speech into flat, emotionless words. "We address a matter of grave concern involving the probationary species." Daniel felt his stomach tighten. He glanced back at Lisa, who gave a small nod. She had noticed too. The council members were staring at the human delegation with expressions that ranged from anger to something like satisfaction. 23 cycles ago, continued, a human vessel entered the forbidden sector designated as Zone Kappa 7. This sector contains the sacred of the extinct species. Entry is prohibited by council law, established 400 cycles past. The penalty for violation is severe. The holographic display shifted, showing a star map. A red line traced the path of a human ship moving through space. It crossed into a region marked with warning symbols in a dozen alien languages. Daniel recognized the ship immediately. The New Horizon, a colony vessel that had left Earth 8 months ago, carrying 5,000 settlers to a new world in the outer territories. "The Council demands an explanation," said, turning his long body to face Daniel directly. "Why have humans violated one of our most sacred laws?" Daniel stood slowly. He felt every eye in the chamber lock onto him. "Speaker, members of the Council," he began, keeping his voice steady. "I was not aware of any incident involving the New Horizon. When did this alleged violation occur?" 23 cycles ago, repeated. "Your ignorance does not excuse the crime." Daniel did the quick math in his head. 23 cycles was about 3 weeks in Earth Standard Time. The New Horizon should have been nowhere near that sector. Their planned route was in completely the opposite direction. "I need to see the evidence," Daniel said. "The New Horizon had clear navigation plans filed with Earth Command. I need to understand how this happened before I can respond to your accusations." A rumbling growl came from the right side of the chamber. Chancellor rose from his seat. He was massive, easily 2.5 meters tall, with thick fur and claws that scraped against the metal floor as he walked. His species, the Collective, controlled most of the Council's military forces. "This is not a trial," said, his deep voice needing no translation to sound threatening. "This is notification. The Council has already reviewed the evidence. The violation occurred. Now we present our terms." Daniel felt Lisa's hand touch his shoulder briefly, A warning. He took a breath and nodded for to continue. The human colonists aboard the New Horizon will be surrendered to Council authority for trial and judgment, stated. Additionally, Earth will agree to limitations on all future expansion beyond its current 3 systems. All new colonies must be approved by Council review. All human vessels will submit to Council tracking and monitoring. These terms are final. The chamber fell silent. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. "You want us to surrender 5,000 civilians," he said slowly, "for a crime we did not knowingly commit, and you want us to give up our right to expand freely into space." "Correct," said. His scales rippled in what might have been satisfaction. "You have 24 hours to signal your agreement. Refusal will result in sanctions and potential military action." Daniel looked around the chamber. Other species watched with expressions he was learning to read. Some looked sympathetic, most looked indifferent. A few looked pleased, as if they enjoyed watching the newcomers being put in their place. This was a test, Daniel realized, not about the New Horizon at all. This was about establishing dominance early. Every species in this chamber had probably gone through something similar when they first joined. They had all submitted, accepted whatever terms were demanded, and learned their place in the galactic hierarchy. Now it was humanity's turn to bend the knee. "I need time to review the evidence and consult with my government," Daniel said carefully. "You have 24 hours, repeated. Use them wisely." The session ended. The lights came back up. Daniel and his team were escorted out of the chamber by Council security drones that floated silently alongside them. As they walked back to their shuttle, Lisa moved close to Daniel. "They are setting us up," she said quietly. "This whole thing smells wrong." "I know," Daniel replied. He was already thinking through the next steps. They had 24 hours to either surrender everything or find another way. Behind them, the massive council chambers stood against the stars, a monument to power and ancient authority. Daniel had spent 6 months learning to work within that system. Now he was starting to wonder if that had been a mistake. The human delegation's quarters aboard the council station were comfortable but clearly designed for species much different from humans. The beds were too short, the lighting was too blue, and the air recycling system made a humming sound that set everyone's teeth on edge. Daniel did not care about any of that. He had pulled his entire team into the main conference room the moment they returned from the council chambers. Now they sat around a table covered in data tablets and holographic displays, racing against their 24-hour deadline. "Show me everything we have on the New Horizon," Daniel said. Commander pulled up the file. He was Earth's chief intelligence officer for the delegation, a thin man with sharp eyes who had spent 20 years analyzing threats for various government agencies. "The New Horizon left Earth 8 months ago," began. "Colony ship, 5,000 settlers heading for a planet we designated as Haven in the Outer Territories. The trip should have taken another 4 months. They were nowhere near the Forbidden Sector. In fact, they should have been on the complete opposite side of Council space." "So how did they end up there?" Daniel asked. "That is what we need to find out," replied. He zoomed in on the star map the Council had shown them. "Zone Kappa 7, the Forbidden Sector. It contains what used to be the before they went extinct 300 years ago. The Council declared it sacred ground and made it off-limits to all travel." Dr. Amy leaned forward. She was the team's, a specialist in alien cultures and history. "I have been researching this since we got back. The official story is that they died out from a plague, very tragic, very mysterious. The Council turned there into a memorial." "You do not sound convinced," Daniel observed. Amy pulled up several documents on her tablet. "Because the timeline does not make sense. There were a thriving civilization with colonies on 6 worlds. Then suddenly, 300 years ago, they are all dead, every single one. No survivors, no refugees, no distress calls, just gone." "Diseases can spread," Lisa said from where she stood by the door. She had refused to sit, keeping herself ready to move if needed. "Not to 6 different planets simultaneously," Amy countered. "Not unless it was engineered, and look at this." She highlighted a section of text. "The Council declared the sector forbidden within weeks of the last dying. They moved very fast to lock down that whole region of space." Daniel felt a cold suspicion forming in his mind. "Are you suggesting the Council killed them?" "I am suggesting we should ask that question," Amy said carefully. Because if the New Horizons stumbled into evidence of something the Council wants hidden, that would explain why they are being so aggressive about this. Was already pulling up the New Horizons communication logs. I have been trying to reach Captain Price all evening. The communication lag is about 40 minutes each way, but I finally got a response. He played the message. Captain Price appeared on the holographic display, a tired-looking man with gray at his temples and worry in his eyes. Commander Ambassador Brooks, Price began. I do not know what the Council told you, but we did not intentionally enter any forbidden zone. 3 weeks ago, our navigation system started showing errors. Small things at first, then bigger problems. Before we could figure out what was wrong, we were pulled out of faster-than-light travel by an emergency shutdown. Price paused, running a hand through his hair. When we got our bearings, we were in a system we did not recognize. There was a planet below us, dead. No life signs, but there were ruins, massive cities all abandoned. We sent down a survey team to see if we could find anything to help us figure out where we were. The message continued. They found something, old records data storage that was still functional. Before they could analyze it, Council ships arrived. They ordered us to leave immediately and placed us under guard. They have been escorting us to a detention facility ever since. Ambassador, they are treating us like criminals, but we did not do anything wrong. Our navigation system was sabotaged. Someone wanted us in that sector. The message ended. The room fell silent. Sabotaged, Daniel said quietly. Someone deliberately sent them there. Nodded. I had our tech specialists analyze the New Horizons system logs remotely. They confirm it. Someone inserted corrupted code into the navigation computer. It was designed to look like random errors, but actually redirected the ship to specific coordinates. The forbidden sector, Lisa said. Someone wanted them to find something. Amy was already pulling up more files. And I think I know what. Give me a minute. Her fingers flew across her tablet. Yes, here. I cross-referenced Council records with independent historical databases from species that are not Council members, that did not die from a plague. She displayed a series of documents side by side. 300 years ago, they refused to join the Galactic Council. They had their own alliance, their own territory. They were not hostile, just independent. The Council saw them as a threat, so they eliminated them. You are saying the Council committed genocide? Daniel said. Multiple sources confirm it, Amy replied. Ships from 3 different Council species attacked simultaneously. They used biological weapons on some worlds, orbital bombardment on others. They never had a chance. And then the Council declared it a plague, sealed off the sector, and made it forbidden to investigate. Lisa moved away from the door, coming to stand behind Daniel's chair. So when the New Horizons showed up and started finding evidence, the Council panicked. They could not risk anyone learning the truth. But they could not just destroy a human colony ship without an excuse, added. So they are using this violation of sacred ground as justification. They get to arrest our people, prevent them from sharing what they found, and put humanity in a subordinate position all at once. Daniel sat back in his chair, processing everything. This is not just about the New Horizon. They are testing us. Every new species that joins the Council goes through something like this. A crisis, a demand, a choice. Submit or face consequences. What do other species do? Lisa asked. Pulled up a file. I checked the records. In the last 1,000 years, 47 species have joined the Council as probationary members. All 47 faced similar situations within their first year. Different scenarios, but the pattern is the same. Accusations, demands, threats of military action. And they all submitted, Daniel guessed. Every single one, confirmed. They paid reparations, accepted limits on their expansion, agreed to Council oversight. That is how the system works. New species learn their place early. Daniel stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the vast expanse of the Council station, a structure that had taken centuries to build. It represented power, stability, order. It also represented a system that had murdered an entire species to maintain that order. What do we do? Amy asked quietly. Daniel turned back to face his team. We have 3 options. First, we could agree to their terms. Surrender the colonists, accept the restrictions, hope we can work within the system to change things eventually. Those colonists would disappear, Lisa said flatly. The Council cannot let them talk about what they found. I know, Daniel said. Second option, we refuse the terms but try to negotiate. offer compromises, seek middle ground, buy time. They are not interested in negotiation, pointed out. This is about power and submission. Anything less than full acceptance of their terms will be seen as defiance. Which brings us to the third option, Daniel continued. He looked at each member of his team. We refuse completely. No negotiation, no compromise. We tell them we know what they did to and we will not surrender our people to murderers. The room was quiet for a long moment. That means war, Lisa said. We cannot win a war against the entire Galactic Council. No, Daniel agreed. We cannot, but we can refuse to submit. We can stand on principle even if it costs us everything. Amy spoke up. If we expose what the Council did to them, it might change things. Other species might start questioning the system. Or they might unite against us as a threat to their stability, countered. Daniel moved back to the table. I need to contact Earth Command. This decision is too big for me to make alone, but I need to tell them what I recommend. What do you recommend? Lisa asked. Daniel looked at the evidence spread across the table. The sabotage, the genocide, the centuries of intimidation and control. He thought about those 5,000 colonists, innocent people whose only crime was discovering an uncomfortable truth. I recommend we refuse, he said. All of it. No surrender, no negotiation. We tell the Council exactly what they are and exactly what we think of their terms. Let out a long breath. That is going to change everything. Yes, Daniel said, it is. He began drafting the message to Earth Command, knowing that in less than 24 hours, humanity would either bend or break. But one thing was certain. They would not bow. 24 hours passed faster than Daniel expected. Earth Command had sent back their response after 6 hours of debate. The message was short and clear. Stand firm, protect our people, do not surrender. Now Daniel stood in the council chambers again, but this time the room was packed. Word had spread about the emergency session, and representatives from dozens of species had come to watch. Everyone knew what was about to happen. The humans would submit, accept their place, and the galactic order would continue as it always had. Daniel could see it in their faces. Anticipation, curiosity. Some species looked sympathetic, but none looked surprised. This was how things worked. This was how they had always worked. Speaker glided to the center of the chamber, his scales catching the light. The time limit has expired. Ambassador Brooks, you will now present Earth's response to the Council's terms. Daniel walked to the speaking platform. His footsteps echoed in the massive space. Behind him, Lisa and the rest of his team stood in formation. They had all volunteered to be here, knowing what was coming. Speaker, members of the Council, Daniel began. His voice was calm, steady. Earth has reviewed your demands. Before I present our response, I need to share what we discovered during our investigation. His head swayed slightly, a gesture of impatience. The investigation is complete. The violation occurred. Your response is all that matters. I disagree, Daniel said. He activated his data tablet and a holographic display appeared above the chamber floor. The New Horizon did enter the Forbidden Sector, but not by choice. Someone sabotaged their navigation system. Someone deliberately sent them there. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several council members shifted in their seats. Furthermore, Daniel continued, we investigated why that sector is forbidden. The official story is that they died from a plague 300 years ago, but that is not true. He changed the display, showing documents and records. They were exterminated. Ships from Council member species attacked their worlds simultaneously. They used biological weapons and orbital bombardment. Every colony was destroyed in a coordinated strike. Then the Council declared it a plague and sealed off the evidence. The chamber erupted. Dozens of voices shouted at once in languages Daniel could not understand. His translation device struggled to keep up with the chaos. Chancellor rose from his seat, his massive form dominating the space. This is outrageous. You dare accuse the Council of genocide. I present evidence, not accusations, Daniel replied. He kept his voice level, but his hands were shaking. The New Horizons survey team found records that confirm what independent historical sources have said for centuries. The Council killed thee and covered it up. Slammed something against the floor, a sharp crack that brought silence. Your evidence is irrelevant. The law states that entry into the Forbidden Sector is prohibited. Whether by accident or design, your ship violated that law. Now present your response to our terms." Daniel took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything that came after would flow from what he said next. "Earth rejects your terms," he said clearly. "All of them. We will not surrender our colonists. We will not accept limitations on our expansion. We will not submit to council oversight." The silence that followed was absolute. Daniel could hear his own heartbeat. He could hear Lisa's breathing behind him. He could hear the ventilation system pushing air through the massive chamber. No one spoke, no one moved. Finally broke the silence. His voice was cold, dangerous. "You refuse." "Completely," Daniel confirmed. "We refuse to negotiate with a body that commits genocide and then demands others bow to its authority. We refuse to surrender innocent people to a corrupt system. We refuse to pretend that your demands have any moral legitimacy." An elderly alien moved forward from the right side of the chamber. Ambassador was from a species called the four-armed beings who had served on the council for over 1,000 years. He had never spoken to Daniel before. "Ambassador Brooks," said, his voice translated into something that sounded weary and sad. "You are young, your species is young, you do not understand how things work here. Every species that joins the council goes through this. It is necessary to maintain order." "Order built on mass murder," Daniel replied. "Order maintained through intimidation and lies. That is not order, that is tyranny." "You would risk war over this," demanded. "You cannot defeat the Council's military forces. Your species will be crushed." Daniel met the Chancellor's gaze. "Then crush us, but we will not surrender our principles to avoid a fight. We will not trade our integrity for your approval. If the only way to exist in this galaxy is to submit to evil, then we choose to fight instead." Lisa stepped forward, standing beside Daniel. She was still in her military uniform, and her hand rested on her sidearm. "Earth's fleet is ready. We will defend our people, all of them." More murmurs spread through the chamber. Species that had submitted centuries ago watched with wide eyes. This had never happened before. No species had ever refused outright. Some had tried to negotiate to buy time to find loopholes, but no one had simply said no. Scales darkened to a deep blue, a sign of anger in his species. "You will regret this decision. The Council has the authority to enforce its laws through military action. We will take your colonists by force if necessary." "Try," Daniel said simply. "But understand this. We know what you are, we know what you did to and we will make sure every species in this galaxy knows it too. You can silence us, but the truth is already spreading. Other species are watching right now. They are seeing what happens when someone stands up to you." He turned to address the entire chamber. "For thousands of years, the Galactic Council has maintained power through fear and intimidation. New species join, face an impossible situation, and learn to submit. But humanity will not. We would rather fight and lose than surrender our values. We would rather die free than live as your subjects." Spoke again, his voice quiet but carrying through the chamber. "Do you understand what you are starting? The consequences of this refusal?" "Yes," Daniel said. "We understand completely, and we accept those consequences." He gathered his data tablet and nodded to his team. "We are done here. Earth has no further business with this council." They began walking toward the exit. Every step felt like it took an hour. Daniel expected weapons to activate, security drones to block their path, something to stop them. But nothing did. The council members sat in their seats, stunned into inaction. This was not in their playbook. This was not how new species behaved. As Daniel and his team reached the door, he heard his voice behind him. "You have made an enemy of the entire Galactic Council." Daniel turned back one last time. "No, we have revealed that the Galactic Council is already an enemy to justice and decency. We are just the first species brave enough to say it out loud." Then they walked out, leaving the council chambers behind. In the corridor, Lisa let out a breath she had been holding. "Well, we did it. No going back now." "No going back," Daniel agreed. His hands were still shaking, but his voice was steady. "Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have rejected the Council's terms and left the chambers. Tell them to prepare for possible military action." Pulled out his communication device. "What do you think the Council will do?" "I do not know," Daniel admitted. "But whatever happens next, we face it standing up, not on our knees." They made their way back to the docking bay where the Endeavor waited. Behind them, the council chambers erupted into argument and debate. Some voices called for immediate military action. Others urged caution. A few, very few, suggested that maybe the humans had a point. Ambassador watched the humans leave from his position in the chambers. He had served on the council for over 300 years. He had seen dozens of species join, face their test, and submit. This was the first time he had seen anyone refuse. Part of him was appalled at the disruption to order. Part of him was terrified of what conflict might come. But a small part of him, a part he had buried centuries ago when his own species submitted to similar demands, felt something he had almost forgotten. Respect. The humans were either very brave or very foolish, perhaps both. But they had done something no one else had dared to do. They had said no. And in doing so, they had changed everything. Captain Lisa Martinez stood on the bridge of the Endeavor, watching the tactical display with growing concern. Red markers appeared one by one, each representing a council warship moving into position around the station. "They are surrounding us," Commander Brandon Hayes said from the tactical station. He was her second in command, a veteran of 3 different conflicts before humanity even knew aliens existed. 12 ships so far, more arriving every hour. Lisa kept her expression neutral, but her mind was racing. The Endeavor was an escort ship, lightly armed and designed for speed rather than combat. They could outrun most of what they were seeing, but not while protecting the delegation. "Status of the ambassador's shuttle?" she asked. "Docked and ready for immediate departure," Brandon confirmed. "But if we try to leave now, we will be intercepted before we can jump to faster-than-light speed." Lisa nodded. She had expected this. The moment Daniel walked out of those council chambers, the military response was inevitable. "Keep monitoring their positions. Let me know if anything changes." She opened a communication channel to Daniel, who was still in the delegation quarters gathering final documents and equipment. "Ambassador, we have a situation developing. Council ships are boxing us in." Daniel's face appeared on her screen, calm despite the circumstances. "How long before we cannot leave at all?" "Maybe 2 hours," Lisa estimated. "After that, we will be completely surrounded." "Then we leave in 90 minutes, Daniel decided. "I need that long to finish transmitting all our evidence to Earth and to several independent news networks across the galaxy. The Council can try to silence us, but they cannot silence everyone." "Understood," Lisa said. She closed the channel and turned to Brandon. "Set condition yellow, all crew to stations. Begin pre-flight preparations, but keep it quiet. I do not want to provoke them before we are ready." The Endeavor's crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had drilled for this scenario 100 times. Lisa just hoped the drills would be enough. Across human space, dozens of light years away, Admiral Parker watched the same tactical situation unfold on a much larger scale. She stood in the command center of Earth's defensive fleet, surrounded by holographic displays showing ship positions, supply lines, and threat assessments. "The Council is moving forces toward the border," her intelligence officer reported. "We count at least 50 warships, probably more we have not detected yet." Studied the displays. 50 ships against Earth's entire defensive fleet of 22 vessels. The numbers were not encouraging, but numbers were not everything. "What is the composition of their fleet?" she asked. "Mostly cruisers and destroyers, standard Council military ships, heavy armor, energy weapons, shielding that can absorb a lot of punishment." Nodded. Council ships were built to fight other Council ships. Centuries of standardized warfare had created a predictable pattern. Heavy shields, powerful energy weapons, close-range combat. It was effective but unimaginative. Human ships were different. Earth had come late to the galactic stage and could not match alien technology directly. So human engineers had gotten creative. They adapted old ideas and new innovations into something the Council had never seen before. "Deploy the defensive grid," ordered. "Move our ships to fallback positions Alpha through Delta, activate all automated defense platforms, and start loading the kinetic systems." Her officers moved to execute the orders. Around Earth and its colony worlds, defensive satellites came online. Missile platforms awakened from standby mode. Rail guns that could accelerate metal projectiles to significant fractions of light speed locked onto approach vectors. The Council was coming with overwhelming force and advanced technology. Earth was ready with speed, unpredictability, and a willingness to fight dirty. Back at the council station, Lisa received the signal that Daniel was ready to depart. She initiated the launch sequence, and the Endeavor's engines began powering up. Immediately, communication channels lit up with warnings from council security. Human vessel Endeavor, you are ordered to power down and remain docked. Any attempt to depart will be considered an act of aggression. Lisa ignored the warnings and continued the launch procedure. Brandon, give me a course that gets us out of this mess. Plotting now, he replied. His fingers flew across the navigation controls. Best option is a sharp burn toward the system's outer edge, then jump to faster than light when we clear their interdiction field. How long in their weapons range? 4 minutes, maybe 5. Lisa grimaced. 4 minutes was a long time in combat. Do it. All hands brace for evasive maneuvers. The Endeavor detached from the station and immediately accelerated hard. The crew felt the force of acceleration push them back into their seats as the ship's engines pushed toward maximum thrust. Council ships reacted instantly. Energy weapons fired, bright lances of light crossing the space where the Endeavor had been seconds before. Evasive pattern Delta, Lisa ordered. The Endeavor jinked left, then right, then dove in a pattern that would be impossible for a larger ship to follow. Launch countermeasures. Small pods ejected from the Endeavor's hull, each one broadcasting false signals and heat signatures. The Council ship's targeting systems struggled to distinguish the real ship from the decoys. 3 minutes to jump point, Brandon announced. More weapons fire crossed their path. One shot grazed their aft shields, and warning lights flashed across the bridge. Shields holding at 70%, the engineer reported. Lisa watched the tactical display. The Council ships were trying to close the distance, but the Endeavor was faster. They were going to make it. Then Chancellor's face appeared on the communication screen. Captain Martinez, this is your final warning. Power down immediately or we will disable your ship. Lisa met his gaze through the screen. Chancellor, you are welcome to try. She cut the communication and nodded to Brandon. Jump as soon as we are clear. 2 minutes later, the Endeavor vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Council ships behind. But the standoff had only begun. Chancellor stood in the Council Military Command Center, watching the human ship escape on his displays. He was not angry at the failure to capture them. He was impressed by their flying. Order the task force to proceed toward human space, he commanded. We will resolve this situation directly. 48 Council warships began moving toward Earth's territory. It was a journey that would take several days at faster-than-light speed, but was patient. The humans had the Council. That could not stand. He expected a quick victory. Humans were technologically inferior, outnumbered, and isolated. Once they saw the true might of the Council, they would surrender. 3 days later, the Council task force arrived at the edge of human space and prepared to advance on Earth's primary colony world. That was when everything went wrong. The first warning was a spread of missiles appearing on sensors, not energy weapons or guided plasma. Actual physical missiles, dozens of them, accelerating on chemical rockets. Ancient technology, one of its tactical officers said dismissively. Our shields will absorb them easily. But the missiles did not try to penetrate the shields. They detonated just outside the defensive perimeter, and suddenly the sensors went dark. Electromagnetic pulses and sensor jamming flooded the area. Restore sensor coverage, ordered. Before they could, the second wave hit. Kinetic penetrators, solid metal rods accelerated to incredible velocities. They punched through shields that were designed to stop energy weapons, not physical projectiles. 3 Council ships took damage before they could adjust their defensive screens. What are they firing? Someone asked in confusion. Railgun projectiles, its weapons officer answered. Solid matter accelerated by electromagnetic force, old human technology pre-space age. But the humans had refined it. The projectiles were dense, fast, and devastatingly effective against shields calibrated for energy weapons. Then came the third wave. Thousands of small drones, each one barely bigger than a human fist, swarmed toward the Council ships. They moved erratically, using tiny thrusters to dodge defensive fire. When they reached the larger ships, they attached to hulls and began burning through armor with thermite charges. "This is not how civilized species fight," someone muttered. Watched his tactical display transform from a simple advance into a chaotic battle. The humans were not trying to win through superior firepower. They were using speed, unpredictability, and weapons the Council had not seen in centuries. "Pull back to defensive formation," he ordered. "Recalibrate shields for kinetic impacts, deploy anti-drone countermeasures." The Council ships regrouped, and their superior numbers began to tell. Human drones were destroyed by the hundreds. The kinetic bombardment slowed as the Council ships adjusted their defenses. But then the human ships themselves appeared, small and fast, darting in and out of weapons range. They fired nuclear-tipped missiles, crude but effective. They launched more kinetic rounds. They used tactics that bordered on reckless, accepting damage to inflict more in return. After 2 hours of combat, ordered a withdrawal. "Fall back to the staging area," he commanded. "We need to reassess." His officers stared at him in shock. The Council task force had never retreated from a technologically inferior opponent, but had seen something in this battle that troubled him. The humans had lost ships. They had taken casualties. By any objective measure, the Council had won this engagement. But the humans had fought like they expected to lose and did not care. They had thrown everything they had at his forces with complete disregard for conventional tactics or their own survival. That kind of opponent was dangerous, not because they could win, but because they would never stop trying. Back on Earth, Admiral watched the battle reports with grim satisfaction. They had bloodied the Council's nose and bought time, but this was just the opening move. "Send a message to all commands," she ordered. "The Council now knows we will fight. Make sure they know we will not stop." In the Council chambers, Ambassador watched the battle reports with growing concern. The humans were losing in terms of ships and casualties, but they were winning something else. Respect, fear, attention. Other species were watching carefully now. If the humans could stand up to the Council, even in defeat, what did that mean for everyone else? The galaxy was changing, and no one knew what would come next. 3 days after the battle, Daniel received an unexpected message. Ambassador requested a private meeting at a neutral location, away from the Council chambers and away from prying eyes. Daniel almost refused. Earth was preparing for the next Council attack, and he had little time for diplomatic games. But something in his message suggested this was different. The elderly ambassador had included a simple phrase that caught Daniel's attention. "Perhaps there is another way." So Daniel agreed to meet. They chose a small trading station in neutral space, a place where dozens of species mingled without Council oversight. Lisa insisted on coming along, and Daniel did not argue. He trusted her instincts about danger. The meeting room was simple and functional. Arrived alone, his 4 arms folded in a gesture that Daniel had learned indicated contemplation. "Thank you for coming," said, settling into a chair designed for his species. "I was not certain you would." "I almost did not," Daniel admitted. "We are rather busy preparing to be invaded." Made a sound that the translator rendered as regret. "Yes, the Council's military response. Chancellor is determined to make an example of humanity." "Then why are we here?" Daniel asked. "If you came to ask us to surrender, you are wasting both our time." "I did not come to ask for surrender," replied. "I came to offer you something unexpected, support." Daniel and Lisa exchanged glances. "Support from the Council," Daniel said carefully. "Forgive my skepticism." "Not from the Council as a whole," clarified. "From a group of members who have been watching your actions with great interest. We have been meeting privately, away from Speaker and Chancellor. We want to discuss an alternative to war." "We will not accept limitations on our expansion," Daniel said firmly. "We will not surrender our colonists. Those terms are not negotiable." "I understand," said. "And honestly, many of us respect your position. What you did in the Council chambers 3 days ago was unprecedented. But it was also necessary. You exposed a truth that many of us have known but never dared to speak." He leaned forward and his voice dropped. "The Council killed the— You were right. We have known this for centuries, but speaking against it meant facing the same fate. So we stayed silent. We maintained order. We convinced ourselves it was justified." Lisa spoke up, and now Now a young species from a small planet has done what we could not, replied. You told the truth. You refused to compromise your principles, and you did it knowing you would probably lose everything. That took courage we did not have. Daniel felt a weight in his chest. He had not expected this. What do you want from us? Nothing, said. But I want to offer something to you. There are 17 council members who share my concerns. We have enough votes to block military action if we act together. We can force a different resolution. Why would you do that? Daniel asked. You have existed under this system for centuries. Why change now? Was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of years. Because you reminded us what we used to be. Before we joined the council, my species valued honor above all else. We believed in justice, in standing firm for what was right. But slowly, year by year, we compromised those values. We told ourselves it was practical, necessary, the price of peace. He looked directly at Daniel. You did not make those compromises. You stood in that chamber and said no, knowing it might destroy your species. That is who we used to be. That is who we should have remained. Lisa leaned back in her chair. What exactly are you proposing? A formal investigation into the incident, said. An independent review of the evidence, conducted openly with representatives from multiple species. If the investigation confirms genocide, the Council must issue a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing. And if they refuse, Daniel asked. Then our coalition will withdraw from the Council, stated. 17 species, some of them quite powerful, leaving simultaneously. That would cripple the Council's authority and legitimacy. Daniel felt hope stirring, but he pushed it down. There must be conditions. What do you want in return? That you agree to work within the Council structure, said. Not as a subordinate, but as a full member with equal voice. Help us reform the system from inside rather than tearing it down from outside. We are not interested in joining a corrupt organization, Daniel said. Then help us make it less corrupt, countered. The Council is not inherently evil. It is simply old, stagnant, and afraid of change. But change is coming whether they like it or not. Your actions guaranteed that. The question is whether that change comes through reform or revolution. Daniel stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see dozens of ships from different species docking and trading. This was what the galaxy could be, he thought. Not ruled by fear and intimidation, but functioning through mutual respect and cooperation. I need to consult with my government, he said finally. Of course, agreed. But I need your answer soon. Chancellor is planning another military action within days. If we are going to stop it, we must act now. Daniel made his decision. Tell your coalition this. We will not negotiate from weakness. The Council must first withdraw all military forces from human territory. They must release the New Horizon colonists without conditions, and they must publicly acknowledge their investigation into the incident. Do those things, and we will talk about the future. Stood, his 4 arms spreading in what might have been approval. That is a strong position. I will present it to the coalition, but I warn you, Speaker and Chancellor will resist fiercely. Let them resist, Daniel said. We have proven we are willing to fight. The question is whether they are willing to lose. 2 days later, the Galactic Council reconvened in emergency session. The chambers were more crowded than Daniel had ever seen them. Word had spread that something significant was happening. Speaker called the session to order, his scales dark with barely controlled anger. We gather to address the human defiance and plan appropriate military response. Before he could continue, Ambassador rose from his seat. Speaker, I invoke the right of formal challenge to Council military action. I have gathered the required signatures to force a vote. Scales rippled in shock. On what grounds? On the grounds that the proposed military action is based on false premises and suppressed evidence, replied. I move that we first conduct an independent investigation into the incident before taking any action against humanity. The chamber erupted. Council members shouted in support and opposition. Chancellor roared his objection but held his ground. The humans provided evidence of genocide, continued, raising his voice over the chaos. Evidence that has never been properly examined or refuted. If we attack them while refusing to investigate these charges, we prove their accusations true. We confirm that the Council operates through fear rather than justice. Speaker tried to restore order, but the debate was already spiraling out of his control. Other species began voicing support for his position. Some spoke of long-buried suspicions. Others questioned why the forbidden sector had never been properly investigated. The vote took 3 hours. When it finally came, 17 species voted for the investigation. 12 voted against. The rest abstained, unwilling to commit to either side. The investigation was approved. Speaker's scales turned almost black. "This is a mistake. You are undermining centuries of order." "Or we are correcting centuries of injustice," replied calmly. "History will judge which." The investigation took 2 weeks. Independent scientists and historians examined reviewed suppressed records, and interviewed species who had been there when it happened. Their conclusion was unambiguous. They had been systematically exterminated by Council forces. The plague story was fiction. The forbidden sector was established to hide evidence of genocide. When the report was presented to the full Council, several members resigned rather than acknowledge the truth. Speaker was forced to step down. Chancellor retained his position but faced severe restrictions on military authority. And in a historic session, the Galactic Council issued its first formal apology in 10,000 years. Daniel stood before the Council again, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was no arrogance, no dismissive attitude. There was shame, discomfort, and something that might have been respect. "On behalf of the Galactic Council," the interim speaker said, "we acknowledge the wrongful deaths of the people and the subsequent cover-up. We withdraw all demands against Earth and the New Horizon colonists, and we offer humanity full membership in the Council with all rights and privileges." Daniel had prepared a speech for this moment, but looking at the Council members, seeing the mix of emotions on alien faces, he decided to keep it simple. "Earth accepts membership," he said, "but we accept it on the understanding that the Council must change. No more cover-ups, no more intimidation of new species, no more prioritizing order over justice." "Agreed," the interim speaker said. Several Council members made gestures of acknowledgement. As Daniel left the chambers that day, Ambassador walked beside him. "You did something remarkable," said. "You changed a system that has existed for thousands of years." "We just refused to accept it," Daniel replied. "Anyone could have done the same." "But no one did," pointed out. "For centuries, species joined the Council, faced intimidation, and submitted. They told themselves it was necessary, practical, the wise choice. You proved there was another way." Daniel stopped walking and looked at the elderly ambassador. "What happens now?" "Now we work to make the Council worthy of membership," said. "It will take time, there will be resistance, but you have inspired others to demand better. That cannot be undone." Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. Humanity had stood against the Galactic Council and won, not through superior weapons, but through refusing to compromise their principles. Admiral Parker stood in the command center, watching as Council forces from human territory. Her ships had taken damage and good people had died, but they had achieved something precious. They had proven that courage mattered more than power. In the outer territories, the New Horizon colonists received word that they were free. Captain Price gathered his people and shared the news. 5,000 settlers cheered, not because they had been saved, but because their government had refused to abandon them. That was worth celebrating. And across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds where younger species lived under Council restrictions, people watched the human example with growing hope. If one species could stand up to the Council and force change, perhaps others could too. The Galactic Council would never be the same. Some members mourned the loss of certainty and order. Others welcomed the chance for reform. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had changed the galaxy, not by conquering it, but by refusing to accept injustice. It was a precedent that would echo for generations. Daniel sat in his quarters aboard the Endeavor, reviewing the final agreements with Earth. Everything they had fought for was included. Full membership, no restrictions, no surrender of colonists, and a commitment to reform. Lisa entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this." "Thanks," Daniel said, accepting the cup. "It still does not feel real." "We bet everything on principle," Lisa said, sitting down. "Most people thought we were insane." "Maybe we were," Daniel admitted. "If had not formed that coalition, if just a few more Council members had sided with, we would be at war right now, a war we could not win." "But we took the bet anyway," Lisa said. Because some things are worth fighting for even when you cannot win. Daniel nodded slowly. The Council existed for 10,000 years on a foundation of fear and submission. We could not change that through compromise or patience. We had to show that defiance was possible. And now other species see that, Lisa said. Told me 17 species voted for investigation, but 40 more abstained instead of supporting. That would never have happened before. The precedent, Daniel said quietly. That was always the real fight, not about winning or losing, but about proving that you could say no. They sat in comfortable silence, drinking their coffee and watching the stars outside the viewport. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was changing, slowly, imperfectly, but changing. And humanity had started that change by doing something very simple. They had refused to compromise their values, even when everyone expected them to. It was a lesson the galaxy would not forget.